Commander Alexander Chen stood at the viewport of the diplomatic vessel Concordia, watching the crystalline structures of the Zordian mothership glitter against the backdrop of unfamiliar stars. His reflection stared back at him, a man of 43 with prematurely silver-streaked black hair and eyes that had spent more time studying ancient texts than the vast expanse of space now surrounding him. He straightened his formal diplomatic uniform, still uncomfortable with the weight of the commander's insignia on his collar. 6 months ago he had been Professor Chen, a respected but obscure historian specializing in pre-digital diplomatic practices of Earth civilizations. Now, he carried the future of humanity in his hands. "Commander, the Zordian delegation has requested your presence in the preliminary chamber," announced Lieutenant Rivera from behind him. "They're eager to meet Earth's chosen representative." Chen nodded, suppressing a sigh. "Eager to size me up, you mean?" He turned from the viewport and followed Rivera through the gleaming corridors of the Concordia. "Any last-minute intelligence I should know?" Rivera handed him a data tablet. "Nothing beyond what you've already studied, sir. The Zordians value precision, logical reasoning, and technological advancement. They've dominated the Galactic Council for 3 centuries due to their superior computing capabilities and crystal-based technology. They claim to be looking forward to incorporating humanity into the interstellar community. Claims and reality often diverge in diplomatic circles," Chen murmured, more to himself than to Rivera. He had not been Earth United's first choice for this mission, or even their 10th. The military had wanted to send a decorated admiral. The political establishment had pushed for a seasoned negotiator. Yet here he was, a historian with no practical diplomatic experience beyond academic reconstructions of ancient negotiations, about to represent humanity in the most significant extraterrestrial contact since first contact 30 years ago. Chen recalled the emergency session that had led to his unexpected appointment. Admiral Khatri's frustrated voice still echoed in his memory. "The Zordians have specifically requested someone who understands the evolution of diplomatic practice, not our tactics, not our technology, but how we've negotiated throughout history. They find our contemporary methods predictable and uninspiring." The Admiral had practically spat the words. "They've reviewed our public academic database and requested Professor Alexander Chen by name." The doors to the preliminary chamber hissed open, revealing a cavernous room with walls that seemed to shift between transparency and opacity. At its center stood 4 Zordians, tall, humanoid figures with bodies composed of interlocking crystalline structures that pulsed with internal light. Their faces were geometric arrangements that somehow conveyed emotion through patterns of luminescence rather than muscular movements. "Commander Chen of Earth," announced the tallest Zordian, its voice a harmonious resonance that seemed to bypass Chen's ears and vibrate directly in his mind. "I am Vexler, primary diplomatic sequencer of the Zordian Alliance. We have awaited your arrival with great anticipation." Chen performed the formal bow he had practiced countless times during the 3-month journey to this neutral meeting point at the edge of the Orion Arm. "Primary sequencer Vexlor, I bring greetings from Earth United, and gratitude for this opportunity for dialogue." "Your historical knowledge intrigues us," said another Zordian, smaller and with a bluish tint to his crystalline form. "I am Subsequencer Ixora, cultural analyst. We have studied your papers on Sumerian treaty formations and Han Dynasty negotiation practices." Chen blinked in surprise. His academic work had barely garnered attention on Earth, yet it had somehow reached across interstellar space to a civilization that had mastered faster-than-light travel millennia ago. "I'm honored by your interest, Subsequencer," he replied cautiously, "though I wonder what relevance ancient human diplomatic practices hold for a species as advanced as yours." Vexlor's crystalline structure shifted, creating what Chen interpreted as the Zordian equivalent of a smile. "Technological advancement and diplomatic wisdom do not always progress in tandem, Commander. The Zordian Alliance has found that the most intriguing solutions often emerge from studying diverse approaches across species and time periods." The 3rd Zordian, whose crystal formation had a reddish hue, moved forward. "I am Tactical Sequencer Rectal. Unlike my colleagues, I questioned the selection of a historian for these negotiations. Resources are the foundation of power, and Earth seeks access to the galactic resource network while offering little in return." Chen felt a prickle of wariness at the blunt assessment. This was the real heart of the matter. Earth needed access to rare materials and technologies controlled by the various species of the Galactic Council, most prominently the Zordians. Humanity's late arrival to interstellar travel had left them disadvantaged in claiming resource-rich systems. Practical sequencer, Shen replied carefully. Earth may be young in galactic terms, but we bring diverse perspectives and adaptive capabilities. History shows that the most successful alliances incorporate complementary strengths rather than identical assets. The fourth Zordian, who had remained silent until now, emitted a chiming sound that Chen's neural translator interpreted as laughter. Well reasoned. I am Harmony Sequencer Mylara. My function is to ensure balanced outcomes that prevent future conflicts. Your historical perspective may indeed prove valuable in achieving this. Vexler gestured toward a circular arrangement of seats that materialized from the floor. Please, Commander Chen, let us begin informally before the full delegation assembly tomorrow. 23 species will attend, many skeptical of Earth's inclusion in the resource-sharing agreements. We Zordians, however, see potential in your world and wish to ally ourselves with you during these proceedings. Jen took his seat, noting how the Zordians arranged themselves. Vexler directly across from him, the others forming a perfect equilateral triangle around their leader. The geometric precision of even their casual seating told him volumes about their culture. Your offer of alliance is generous, Chen said, but I'm curious about its foundation. What does the Zordian alliance hope to gain from supporting Earth's petition? Rektal's crystals darkened slightly. Direct questioning, inefficient. On the contrary, Vexlor countered. It demonstrates the human capacity for forthright assessment that we find valuable. Commander Chen, the Zordian alliance has dominated council proceedings for centuries through technological superiority. However, emerging species now challenge us with biological adaptations we cannot replicate. Humans possess remarkable cognitive flexibility and cultural diversity. Your planet's history of diplomatic solutions, from your ancient peace treaties to your global unification, represents an approach complementary to our own. You want us as a counterbalance to other factions, Chen surmised. We want allies who think differently, Mylara corrected. The crystal cannot be strengthened by adding more crystal of the same composition, but by incorporating complementary materials that address its weaknesses. Jen nodded slowly, remembering the ancient Chinese concept of shi sha, strategic advantage through position rather than force. Earth might lack technological might, but its unique perspective could serve as valuable leverage in the complex politics of the galactic community. For the next 4 hours, they discussed the intricacies of the upcoming negotiations. Chen learned about the resource-rich Catan Hive, insectoid beings who controlled multiple mineral-laden asteroid belts, the Mer Collective, amphibious entities whose oceanic worlds contained rare biological compounds, and a dozen other species, each with their own agenda regarding Earth's inclusion in the resource networks. Throughout the conversation, Chin observed the subtle shifts in the Zordians' crystal patterns, noting which topics caused brightness increases and which triggered momentary opacity. He had spent his career studying how to read human expressions across different cultures. Now he found himself applying those principles to beings whose biology was entirely alien, yet patterns emerged. Rektal's crystals always darkened when speaking of the chitin hive, while Ixoras's formations became more complex when discussing cultural exchange possibilities. As their meeting concluded, Vexilor extended a crystalline appendage that shifted form until it approximated a human hand. Commander Chen, the formal proceedings commence after next cycle's rest period. As your allies, we suggest you allow us to handle the technical aspects of the resource distribution proposals while you focus on addressing concerns about Earth's cultural integration. Our computational models indicate this division of labor will yield optimal results. Chen clasped the offered hand, feeling its cool, smooth surface against his skin. I appreciate your guidance, Primary Sequencer. I look forward to working alongside the Zordian delegation. He maintained his diplomatic smile while mentally noting the subtle direction being established. The Zordians positioning themselves to control the substantive negotiations while relegating him to secondary cultural matters. After the Zordians departed, Lieutenant Rivera approached with a datapad. Sir, your quarters have been prepared. The Earth United Cabinet has requested an update transmission within the hour. Chen nodded, his mind still processing the nuances of the interaction. Rivera, I need complete recordings of that meeting for review, and find me everything we have on Zordian crystal pattern variations and their correlation to emotional or cognitive states. You suspect deception, sir? Rivera asked quietly. Chen shook his head slowly. Not deception. Not yet. But in my studies of human diplomatic history, I've never encountered a powerful entity offering alliance to a weaker one without substantial self-interest. The Zordians aren't hiding their agenda so much as presenting it in the most favorable light. As he walked toward his quarters, Chen recalled a passage from the ancient Egyptian diplomatic correspondence found at Amarna, letters between Pharaoh Akhenaten and the king of Babylon that spoke of brotherhood while carefully calculating the exact value of gold exchanged as gifts. Some aspects of diplomacy, it seemed, were truly universal. That night, as the Concordia maintained its position in neutral space, Chen reviewed historical accounts of first diplomatic contacts between disparate human cultures, searching for patterns that might apply to his current situation. Tomorrow, he would meet representatives from 23 alien civilizations, each with their own agenda regarding humanity's place in the galactic community. The Zordians had offered themselves as allies, but the historian in him knew that alliances were delicate constructs, often shifting when circumstances changed. As he finally prepared for sleep, Chen whispered to himself the words of Sun Tzu that had guided much of his academic career. Know the enemy and know yourself. In 100 battles, you will never be defeated. Except the Zordians weren't enemies, at least not yet. They were allies with unknown motives, which in some ways made them more dangerous than declared opponents. Tomorrow would begin the real test of whether a lifetime studying the past could help humanity secure its future among the stars. The neutral space station Harmonia lived up to its name in appearance only. Its gleaming white superstructure formed a perfect ring around a central spherical hub, creating an image of balance and unity visible from parsecs away. But within its pristine corridors, the political maneuvering had begun before the first formal session even convened. Commander Chen arrived at the central conference chamber an hour before the scheduled start, a habit formed during his academic days when he would sit alone in lecture halls, absorbing the atmosphere before presenting his research. The massive chamber was arranged in 3 concentric rings of seating, with the innermost circle reserved for the 7 founding species of the Galactic Council, including the Zordians. The middle ring would seat 14 species with established interstellar presence, while the outermost ring, where Earth's single seat waited, housed representatives from newly admitted or provisional members. Symbolism exists across all cultures, Chen murmured to himself, running his hand along the smooth material of Earth's assigned station. Place reflects status, and we've been positioned as far from the center of power as possible. An astute observation, Commander Chen, came a melodic voice from behind him. Chen turned to find a tall, willowy being with iridescent skin that shifted between deep blue and purple hues. Her eyes, 3 of them arranged in a triangle on her face, blinked in sequence rather than simultaneously. Ambassador Niara of the Mur Collective, she introduced herself with a flowing gesture that reminded Chen of underwater movements, though she stood comfortably in the station's standard atmosphere. You are early, as am I, perhaps because we both understand that the real negotiations happen before the formal recordings begin. Chen inclined his head respectfully. Ambassador Niara, Earth has studied the contributions of the Mur Collective to xenobiology with great admiration. Your techniques for oceanic ecosystem restoration have inspired similar projects in our own seas. A pleased ripple moved across Niara's skin. You are well informed for a species so new to the galactic community and unusual. Most representatives arrive with engineering or political backgrounds, yet Earth sends a historian to shape its future. Sometimes understanding the past is the best way to navigate the future, Chen replied, watching her carefully. The Mur Collective controlled 3 water worlds, rich in biological compounds essential for advanced medical treatments, a resource Earth desperately needed access to. Niara moved closer, her voice dropping. The Zordians have claimed you as their ally, an interesting choice for them. They typically prefer more predictable partners. Before Chen could respond, a high-pitched trilling filled the chamber as a delegation of insectoid beings entered. Each stood nearly 2 meters tall, with gleaming exoskeletons in varying shades of amber and emerald. Their compound eyes reflected the chamber's light in fractured patterns. "The Keton Hive," Niara whispered, though she had already begun moving away from Chen. "They control 17 asteroid mining operations in resource-rich systems. Be careful in their presence. They communicate as much through pheromones as through words, and your translator will miss those subtle messages." Chen watched her retreat, filing away the warning. The chamber filled rapidly after that, with representatives from across the galaxy taking their assigned positions. He observed each entry, noting alliances and tensions revealed through body language and positioning. The Zordians arrived last among the founding species, their crystalline forms refracting light across the chamber in what Chen recognized as a deliberate display of presence. Vexlor acknowledged Chen with a subtle pulse of light before taking his position in the inner circle. The formal proceedings began with ancient protocols, statements of peaceful intent, recognition of shared cosmic heritage despite biological differences, and acknowledgement of the Harmonia station's neutrality. Chen listened carefully, but his attention was equally focused on the translation interfaces built into each delegation station. The neural translators provided to Earth's delegation were supposedly state-of-the-art technology, direct thought-to-thought communication that bypassed the limitations of verbal language. Yet Chen had noticed something curious during his preliminary meeting with the Zordians: occasional microsecond delays in translation, particularly when discussing resource allocation. As the opening statements continued, Chen activated a discrete recording function in his personal data tablet. While appearing to take diplomatic notes, he began isolating and comparing translation feeds from various species. The formal session lasted 7 hours, covering preliminary agenda setting for the week-long negotiations. Nothing substantive was discussed. That would come in the smaller committee meetings scheduled to begin the following day. After the session adjourned, Vexlor approached Chen in the central atrium, where refreshments had been arranged according to the biological needs of each species. "Commander Chen, you showed admirable restraint today. Many new species feel compelled to assert themselves immediately, which rarely serves their interests," the Zordian remarked, his crystalline structure shifting into what Chen now recognized as a formal posture of approval. "I believe in observation before action, primary sequencer," Chen replied, accepting a glass of water from an automated server. "Earth's position is already well documented in our application materials. Today was about understanding the dynamics between established members. Precisely why you are an ideal representative for your species," Vexlor said. "The Zordian delegation would be honored if you would join us for a private strategic session this evening. The committee assignments will be crucial for Earth's interests, and we have considerable influence in those determinations." Chen agreed with appropriate gratitude, but as soon as he returned to his private quarters on the Earth diplomatic vessel, he began analyzing the translation recordings. He worked through the night, comparing subtle variations in how the Zordian statements were translated to different species. By the 3rd hour, a pattern emerged. Resource terminology underwent slight but significant shifts in meaning depending on which species received the translation. "Computer, isolate translation feed to the chitin hive during Vexlor's statement on outer rim mining rights," Chen commanded, rubbing his tired eyes. The computer displayed the translation. "The Zordian Alliance recognizes the primary claim of established operations in disputed territories, with secondary development rights open for council review." Now show the same statement as translated to the Mer Collective. This version read subtly differently. "The Zordian Alliance proposes council review of all operational claims in disputed territories, with priority consideration for established presence." Chen leaned back in his chair, understanding blooming like a dark flower in his mind. To the Kitten Hive, with their extensive mining operations, the translation emphasized protection of established claims. To the Mer Collective, it suggested a more open review process. Both delegations would believe the Zordians supported their position, while the actual statement contained enough diplomatic ambiguity to deny any deception later. "Lieutenant Rivera," Chen called through the ship's communication system, "I need everything we have on Zordian translation matrix technology, particularly any known limitations or customization capabilities." "Sir, that's highly classified information," came Rivera's concerned voice. "Our intelligence on Zordian technology is limited at best." "Then get me Admiral Khatri." Immediately, 30 minutes later, Chen was in secure communication with Earth's highest-ranking Space Command officer. After explaining his findings, he waited as the Admiral considered the implications. "You believe the Zordians are manipulating translations to create contradictory alliances," Katri summarized. "But to what end? And why align publicly with Earth while doing so?" "I don't have those answers yet," Chen admitted. "But historical precedent suggests a positioning strategy. The Byzantine Empire excelled at creating buffer states and conflict zones between themselves and potential threats. I suspect we're being set up as either a distraction or a scapegoat." Katri's expression hardened. "Find proof, Commander. Suspicion isn't enough to challenge a founding species of the Galactic Council, especially one controlling the technological infrastructure we desperately need access to." After the communication ended, Chen prepared for his meeting with the Zordian delegation. He deliberately chose his least formal diplomatic attire, a subtle message that he considered this an unofficial, friendly consultation. Every detail mattered in the complex dance of interspecies diplomacy. The Zordian diplomatic suite occupied an entire section of Harmonia's inner ring. Unlike the austere functionality of the Earth vessel, their quarters featured crystal formations that seemed to grow from the walls and ceiling, creating an environment that mimicked their homeworld's architecture. Chen was escorted to a central chamber, where all 4 Zordians from his initial meeting awaited. "Commander Chen," Vexlor greeted him, "we have reviewed the committee structures and believe Earth would be best served on the Cultural Exchange and Historical Documentation Committees. Your expertise would be highly valued there." Chen noted the careful exclusion of any resource allocation committees, the actual heart of the negotiations from Earth's perspective. "While I appreciate the recognition of my academic background," he replied carefully, "Earth's primary interest remains securing access to necessary resources for our continued development. Perhaps the Resource Sustainability Committee would be more appropriate?" Rektal's crystals darkened. "That committee is traditionally reserved for species with established resource management histories. Earth's extractive industrial past would undermine your credibility there." Chen maintained a thoughtful expression, while inwardly noting the slight. "History provides many examples of species learning from past mistakes," he offered. "Earth's recent planetary restoration projects demonstrate our evolution beyond extractive practices." "A fair point," Ixora interjected. "Perhaps we could propose Earth's inclusion on the New Technologies Exchange Committee? It interfaces with resource allocation while focusing on application rather than distribution." Vexlor's crystal structure brightened in what appeared to be approval. An excellent compromise. "The committee meets in the secondary chamber during 3rd rotation tomorrow. We will ensure your delegation receives all relevant briefing materials." The discussion continued for another hour, with the Zordians sharing what seemed to be valuable intelligence about other delegations' positions. Chen listened attentively, asking occasional questions that he hoped would reveal more about their true strategy without exposing his suspicions. As the meeting concluded, Mylara approached Chen separately. "Commander, I sense you are a dedicated historian. Our archives contain records dating back 17,000 of your years. Perhaps you would enjoy a private viewing of some artifacts from Earth's sector before human civilization emerged? Few of your species have seen these records." The offer was tempting, potentially valuable information about Earth's prehistory, but Chen recognized it as a distraction technique. "I would be honored, Harmony Sequencer. Perhaps after the critical resource negotiations are completed? My focus must remain on securing Earth's future before indulging my historical interests." Mylora's crystal structure dimmed slightly. "Of course. Another time." Chen returned to his quarters via a circuitous route through Harmonia's middle levels, where most species' working diplomatic staff maintained offices. He paused near the Khitan Hive's designated area, observing the coming and going of various delegates. A tall insectoid emerged from the section that housed the Zordian technical support staff, a curious connection that didn't align with the tensions the Zordians had described between their species. Later that night, Chen used his security clearance to access the station's communication hub logs. Not the actual communications, which would be encrypted and protected, but the metadata showing connection patterns between different sections. The results confirmed his growing suspicion. Despite the Zordians' claims of supporting Earth's petition, they had established secure communication channels with nearly every major resource-controlling delegation in the past 48 hours. Chen sat alone in his quarters, reviewing his findings. The pattern was becoming clear. The Zordians were positioning themselves as allies to multiple factions with competing interests. Such a strategy could only end with some delegations feeling betrayed when final agreements were reached. His data tablet chimed with an incoming message, the promised briefing materials for tomorrow's committee meeting. Chen opened the file, scanning the documents detailing the New Technologies Exchange Committee's protocol and history. Buried deep in the appendices, he found what appeared to be standard diplomatic language about information sharing, but his historian's eye caught the crucial clause. All technologies discussed in committee became subject to reciprocal development rights among committee members. Chen leaned back, the final piece clicking into place. If Earth joined this committee and shared its emerging technologies as required by protocol, the Zordians would gain legal access to human innovations without offering equivalent resource access in return. Meanwhile, Earth would be isolated from the Critical Resource Allocation Committee, where the actual decisions about galactic resource distribution would be made. He pulled up the original diplomatic invitation extended to Earth 6 months ago. There, in carefully worded diplomatic language, the Zordians had emphasized their desire to facilitate Earth's integration into the galactic community through appropriate committee placements. They had planned this from the beginning. A chime at his door interrupted his thoughts. Lieutenant Rivera entered with a secure data crystal. "Commander, our intelligence division intercepted this. It required 3 AI systems to decode, and even then we only have fragments." Chen activated the crystal. A partial recording appeared. Vexlor in communication with an unknown entity, crystal patterns shifting rapidly. The neural translators struggled with the dialect, but one phrase came through clearly. "The Earth delegation will be contained in non-essential committees while we secure primary access to their sector's resources. Their historical representative lacks the technical knowledge to recognize the implications until agreements are finalized." Chen closed his eyes briefly, anger and disappointment warring within him. He had hoped his suspicions were unfounded, that the Zordians had recognized genuine value in alliance with humanity. Instead, they had selected him precisely because they believed a historian would be easier to manipulate than a technical specialist. "They've underestimated the value of historical knowledge," Chen said quietly. "Prepare for emergency protocols, Lieutenant. We're about to implement a diplomatic strategy that hasn't been used since the Cold War era on Earth." "Sir?" Rivera looked concerned. "If we can't trust our allies," Chen explained, removing his neural translator and placing it in a shielded container, "then we need to create new ones, and quickly." He pulled out an antique paper notebook and fountain pen from his personal effects, technologies so old they would be invisible to the station's monitoring systems. "Tomorrow's committee meeting will proceed as planned," he continued, beginning to write in a shorthand of his own creation. "But tonight, I have messages to deliver." Without using any technology the Zordians control, Rivera watched as Chen sketched what appeared to be ancient Earth diplomatic symbols. "What exactly are you planning, Commander?" Chen looked up, his expression resolute. "The Zordians believe a historian can only look backward. I'm about to show them how understanding the past can be the most dangerous weapon in shaping the future." Morning arrived on Harmonia Station with the artificial adjustment of lighting designed to mimic planetary cycles. Commander Chen had slept barely 2 hours, but his mind was sharply focused. On his desk lay 3 handwritten notes, each folded using different techniques from Earth's diplomatic history. A triangular fold for the Khitan Hive, a fan pattern for the Mir Collective, and a sealed scroll method for the delegation from the Axiom Confederacy, a species of energy beings who controlled several systems rich in rare isotopes. "Rivera, you understand your role today?" Chen asked as his lieutenant entered with the morning briefing. "Yes, sir. I'll attend the New Technologies Committee meeting in your place, citing your sudden need to review urgent communications from Earth," Rivaro replied, his expression serious. "Meanwhile, you'll be making your unofficial visits." Chen nodded, checking his reflection in the small mirror on his wall. He had chosen his most formal diplomatic attire today, not to impress the Zordians, but to ensure other species recognized his official status during his unscheduled appearances at their quarters. "Remember, If the Zordians question my absence, express concern about my well-being, suggest that the neural translator might be causing me difficulty adjusting to station conditions, Chen handed Rivera a small device. Keep this recorder active during the entire committee session. I need to know exactly how they position Earth's role when they believe I'm not present. 30 minutes later, Chen moved through Harmonia's less-traveled maintenance corridors, pathways he had memorized during his late-night research. His first destination was the Katon Hive's diplomatic section, located in the station's outer ring, where environmental conditions could be more easily customized for various species' needs. The atmosphere grew noticeably warmer and more humid as he approached. 2 insectoid guards flanked the entrance, their mandibles clicking rapidly as they detected his presence. Commander Chen of Earth requests brief audience with Submatriarch Zget on a matter of mutual resource interest, he announced formally, presenting both his credentials and the triangular folded note. The matter requires direct communication without technological intermediaries. The guards' compound eyes reflected light in kaleidoscopic patterns as they consulted silently through their hive-mind connection. After a moment, one stepped aside, mandibles clicking in what Chen recognized as a formal permission gesture. The Katon diplomatic chamber resembled nothing so much as an elaborate version of Earth's ancient termite mounds. Soaring structures of hardened material rising from floor to ceiling, creating meeting spaces at various levels. Submatriarch Tizket awaited him on a middle platform, her iridescent green exoskeleton marking her as a senior diplomatic caste member. Her Earth commander approaches without translator apparatus, she noted, her mandibles producing sounds that Chen could understand only through his intensive study of basic chitin communication patterns before the mission. Unusual, concerning, interesting. Chen bowed in the specific manner his research indicated would show respect to a submatriarch. From the waist, arms crossed over chest, head lowered but eyes still visible. Honored submatriarch, I come without translator, by necessity. What I must communicate cannot risk technological interception. He handed her the note, which she examined with delicate feelers. Written in carefully researched Katon symbolic language were the words, Zordian translation matrices contain deliberate variations. Mining rights negotiations compromised. Earth seeks direct dialogue without Zordian mediation. Tezket's antennae quivered, a sign of surprise or alarm. Evidence required, accusation significant. Chen produced a small analog playback device, technology so simple it was invisible to the station's sophisticated monitoring systems. It displayed the comparative translations he had documented, highlighting the crucial differences in terminology. Earth has no established resource claims, Chen explained carefully. Our interest is in fair participation in the galactic resource network. We believe the Katon Hive values direct communication and clear territorial boundaries. Tizket studied the evidence, her compound eyes unreadable to human perception. After a long moment, she produced a series of rapid clicks that Chen's research identified as a Katon expression of comprehension and concern. Historical knowledge serves Earth Commander well, she finally responded. Hive suspected translation discrepancies but lacked comparative data. Mutual verification benefits both species. She extended a foreleg, touching the back of Chen's hand lightly with her feeler, an extremely rare gesture of alliance from the typically standoffish chitin. Submatriarch honors Earth, Chen responded, relieved his gambit had succeeded. May I suggest a direct exchange of information regarding the Resource Allocation Committee proceedings? Acceptable, diplomatic attaché assigned as direct contact, no technology intermediaries. Tizket indicated a smaller Katon who stepped forward. Coordinates will follow through secured channel. Chen departed with the first alliance formed, careful to use a different route to his next destination. The Mer Collective occupied a section of Harmonia's middle ring, where part of their diplomatic area contained water chambers for their comfort. Though they could function in standard atmospheres when necessary, Ambassador Niara received him personally in a transition chamber designed for cross-species meetings. Vertical tanks of luminescent water lined the walls, containing small aquatic creatures that Chen realized were not decorative, but communication conduits, living extensions of the Mer neural network. Commander Chen returns without his translation device, she observed, her 3 eyes blinking in their triangular sequence. How fascinating that you now seek private conversation after our brief exchange yesterday. Chen presented his fan-folded note, which contained a message written in the flowing script of the mirror language. Zordians negotiate separately with multiple factions. Earth offers terraforming technology exchange for oceanic compound access without Zordian involvement. Nayara's skin rippled with colors, deep purples and blues shifting to momentary flashes of yellow as she read. Bold claims and bolder offers, Commander. Earth's terraforming technologies are still developing, while our biological compounds represent centuries of refinement. Earth doesn't claim technological superiority, Chen acknowledged. We offer perspective and approach. Our planet has undergone rapid environmental shifts requiring adaptive solutions. We've compressed centuries of trial and error into decades of intensive research. He produced a small physical data storage device, a simple flash drive that contained Earth's most recent breakthroughs in oceanic carbon sequestration and coral reef regeneration. This information is offered freely without expectation of equivalent exchange. Consider it evidence of Earth's good faith and the potential value of direct cooperation. Nyara held the device, her expression unreadable to human eyes, but the pattern of colors rippling across her skin suggested intense interest. The Zordians claimed your species was technically primitive, but culturally interesting. Your actions suggest otherwise. The Zordians evaluated us based on their priorities, Chen replied carefully. Earth values diverse approaches to problem solving. Our history is filled with examples of technological leaps emerging from unlikely sources. The ambassador inserted the drive into an isolated reader specifically designed for non-benmarked information review, a security precaution that Chen had counted on. As she reviewed the data, the water tanks around them pulsed with increased activity, the small creatures within darting in complex patterns. These carbon sequestration methods, she finally said, they incorporate biological symbiosis rather than mechanical extraction, similar to approaches on our secondary colony world, but with applications we hadn't considered for certain toxic environments. Chen nodded. Earth learned the hard way that working with natural systems produces more sustainable results than attempting to control them entirely. We believe this philosophy aligns with the Mer Collective's approach to ecosystem management. Yara's skin settled into a steady blue glow, a sign Chen had learned indicated decision or resolution. The collective will consider direct negotiation with Earth regarding limited compound exchange. We will contact your vessel through secure channels using recognition codes that bypass standard translation protocols. With two potential alliances established, Chen made his way to his final destination. The Axiom Confederacy maintained minimal physical quarters, as their energy-based forms required specialized containment fields rather than conventional environments. Their diplomatic presence manifested primarily through projection interfaces and appointed physical proxies from compatible species. Chen had arranged to meet with Sentinel Oros, the material proxy who represented Axiom interests in physical spaces. The Sentinel was a silicon-based life form who appeared almost crystalline himself, though, unlike the geometric precision of the Zordians, his form suggested natural crystal formations, rough-hewn and irregular. Commander Chen, Oros greeted him in the small antechamber outside the Axiom's energy containment area. The Confederacy's observers noted your movements through the station today. Unusual patterns for an Earth diplomat. Chen wasn't surprised by this revelation. The energy being's perception extended beyond conventional sensory limitations. Unusual circumstances require adaptive responses, he replied, presenting the scroll-folded message. Earth seeks clarification regarding certain aspects of the resource negotiation. Oros unrolled the message, which outlined Chen's concerns about the Zordians' translation manipulations and included a proposal. Earth would support the Axiom Confederacy's petition for expanded energy harvesting rights in the Orion sector in exchange for technological assistance bypassing Zordian communication systems. Interesting propositions, Oros commented, his crystalline features catching the light as he tilted his head. The Confederacy has observed discrepancies in information flow since negotiations began. Your evidence provides context for these anomalies. Chen waited, as Oros seemed to commune silently with the energy field behind him, consulting with his Axiom principles. After several minutes, the proxy returned his attention to Chen. "The Confederacy accepts your proposal with a modification," Oros stated. "Rather than supporting our current petition, which has already garnered sufficient backing, Earth will receive limited access to quantum communication technology that operates independently of the standard translation network." This was an unexpected improvement over Chen's original request. "Earth would consider such an exchange highly favorable," he replied, careful not to appear too eager. "The technology will be transferred to your vessel within 6 hours, disguised as standard environmental regulation equipment," Oros continued. "Instructions for its operation will accompany the transfer. Use it wisely, Commander." By midnight at noon, Chen had returned to the Earth diplomatic vessel, where Lieutenant Rivera awaited with the recording from the New Technologies Committee meeting. "They didn't even try to hide their intentions once they believed you weren't listening," Rivera reported, activating the playback. "The Zordians proposed Earth share all terraforming innovations while receiving only appropriate technology transfers, as determined by developmental readiness assessment. Essentially giving them complete control over what we'd receive in return," Chen nodded grimly. "And our mining rights petition? Tabled indefinitely due to procedural considerations requiring extended review," Rivera replied. "They're systematically blocking our access to every meaningful resource channel while extracting whatever technical knowledge they can." Chen turned to the vessel's secured planning room, where he had arranged 3 physical maps of the galactic sectors under negotiation. No digital displays, no connected technology, only paper and writing implements that couldn't be monitored. "We've established potential alliances with 3 key delegations," he explained to Rivera. "Each controls resources or technology that Earth needs, and each has reason to be wary of Zordian influence. Now we need to transform these separate arrangements into a coordinated counter-strategy." Rivera studied the maps, the 36 stratagems, he realized, recognizing Chen's methodical approach. "You're implementing befriend the distant enemy to attack the nearby one." Chen nodded, pleased by his lieutenant's historical knowledge. "The Zordians have positioned themselves as our allies while secretly working against us. Rather than confronting them directly, a battle we cannot win given their position on the Council, we're creating a network of alternative relationships that collectively challenge their control of the proceedings." He marked specific locations on the maps, creating a pattern that only became visible when all 3 were overlaid. The Khitan hive controls mineral resources here, here, and here. The Mare Collective has biological compounds we need in these systems, and the Axiom Confederacy offers a communication channel independent of Zordian monitoring, a triangulation strategy, Rivera observed. "But the Zordians will notice these new alliances eventually." "I'm counting on it," Chen replied. "But by then the narrative will have shifted. This isn't just about securing resources for Earth. It's about exposing a systematic manipulation of the entire negotiation process." He turned to the small table where he had laid out his notes from Earth's diplomatic history archives. The Congress of Vienna in 1814 featured similar dynamics, multiple powers attempting to control negotiations through selective alliances. Prince Metternich of Austria initially dominated proceedings, until Talleyrand of France identified and exploited divisions among the major powers. "And you're playing Talleyrand in this scenario?" Rivera asked. "But with one crucial difference," Chen said. "Talleyrand operated primarily through secret bilateral agreements. We're going to bring everything into the open at precisely the right moment." He showed Rivera a sketch of what appeared to be an ancient ceremonial layout. "Earth has been invited to host a cultural exchange event tomorrow evening, a diplomatic courtesy extended to new species joining the negotiations. The Zordians likely expect us to present some innocuous display of human culture while they continue their real work in the background." "And instead?" Rivera prompted. Chen's expression was resolute as he outlined his plan. "Instead, we're going to transform it into a diplomatic revelation that will reshape these negotiations entirely. I'll need the engineering team to create several specific items according to these specifications, and I need you to deliver these invitations by hand, not electronically, to every delegation on the station." As Rivera departed with his assignments, Chen sat alone at his desk and opened an ancient text he had brought from Earth, Sun Tzu's The Art of War. He turned to a dog-eared page and read aloud, "The supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting." Tomorrow would determine whether human diplomatic history contained lessons powerful enough to overcome the technological advantages of humanity's supposed allies. Chen began writing out his cultural presentation for the evening gathering, a demonstration of Earth's diplomatic traditions that would serve as the perfect cover for exposing the Zordians' deception to the entire galactic community. The grand reception hall of Harmonia Station had been transformed according to Commander Chen's exacting specifications. Earth's engineering team had worked through the night, creating what appeared to be a simple cultural exhibition, but was, in reality, a carefully orchestrated diplomatic trap. The circular space now contained a series of concentric tables arranged in a pattern inspired by ancient Persian royal banquets, where seating position conveyed precise hierarchical messages while maintaining the illusion of equality. "The final calibrations on the ceremonial cups are complete, sir," reported Chief Engineer Matsuo, her voice low as she handed Chen a small control device disguised as an ancient timepiece. "Each one contains the quantum receivers, as specified. When activated, they'll project directly above the table's surface." Chan nodded, slipping the device into his pocket. "And the translation override?" "Installed and tested. Once activated, it will broadcast all communications in their original form with simultaneous accurate translation to all species present, bypassing the Zordian matrix entirely." She hesitated. "Commander, the Zordian technical team requested access to inspect our setup earlier. We denied them entry citing Earth cultural protocols, but they seemed suspicious." "As expected," Chen replied. "They sense something is amiss, but can't determine what. Their arrogance works to our advantage. They believe any human deception would utilize sophisticated technology they could easily detect. They're not looking for strategies dating back to Earth's pre-digital diplomatic era." The doors to the reception hall slid open as the first delegations began to arrive. Chen took his position at the entrance, wearing formal diplomatic attire that incorporated elements from multiple Earth cultures. A Chinese silk collar, Persian geometric embroidery patterns, and subtle West African textile motifs. Every detail had been researched to convey specific historical diplomatic meanings that he suspected only humans would recognize. "Commander Chen," Vexlor greeted him, the Zordians' crystal structure particularly luminescent today. "Your delegation has created quite an intriguing environment. These arrangements reference ancient Earth-gathering practices, I presume?" "Indeed, Primary Sequencer," Chen confirmed with a respectful bow. "Tonight we share some of Earth's diplomatic heritage, including ceremonial practices that have shaped our approach to interspecies relations." Dexter's crystal structure shifted in what Chen had learned to recognize as mild amusement. "Charming. Cultural exchanges provide valuable context, though of course the substantive negotiations continue in committee sessions." "Of course," Chen agreed pleasantly. "Culture informs policy, but practical matters require technical expertise. Speaking of which, I must apologize for my absence from yesterday's committee meeting. I understand Lieutenant Rivera represented Earth's interests capably." "He was most attentive," Vexler replied, "though perhaps lacking your historical perspective. The committee has scheduled further discussion of Earth's technology sharing protocols tomorrow." As more delegations arrived, Chen personally guided each to their designated seating, explaining the Earth custom of assigned places at ceremonial functions. The Chiton representatives clicked their mandibles in recognition when Chen placed them at a table with optimal sightlines to the central presentation area, a subtle acknowledgement of their alliance. The Mer Collective delegation, led by Ambassador Niara, was seated near specially designed water features that created soothing harmonic tones. The Axiom proxy, Sentinel Oros, received a position near an energy field that complemented his silicon-based physiology. Most crucially, Chen had arranged the Zord delegation at the center table, the apparent position of honor, but also the most visible location in the room. All other tables were positioned to face toward this central point, creating what appeared to be a deferential arrangement but would serve a very different purpose when the time came. When all 23 species were seated, Chen moved to the small raised platform at one end of the hall. He wore no visible translation device, which caused a subtle stir among the delegates. "Distinguished representatives of the galactic community," he began, his voice clear and measured, "Earth is honored to share with you this cultural ceremony we call the Transparency Banquet. Throughout human history, sharing food and drink has been a sacred trust, a time when conflicts are set aside and truth is valued above advantage. At his signal, Earth staff began moving through the room, placing before each delegate a ceremonial cup. These varied in design according to each species' physiological needs. Crystalline vessels for the Zordians, copper-infused containers for the energy-based proxies, specialized humidity-preserving goblets for the insectoid species. In ancient Babylon, Chin continued, diplomatic gatherings included a ritual where participants selected from different ceremonial vessels. Each choice represented a symbolic commitment to the proceedings. He lifted his own cup, a simple clay design that contrasted with the more elaborate vessels offered to the other delegates. The plainest cup, which I hold, represents the host's commitment to serve rather than dominate the gathering. Chen noted Vexlor's crystal structure shifting in what appeared to be mild confusion as the Zordian examined the ornate crystal vessel before him. Please select your ceremonial vessel according to your preference, Chen instructed the gathering. In Earth tradition, your choice reflects your diplomatic intention for these negotiations. The delegates exchanged curious glances, but complied with the cultural demonstration. As Chen had anticipated, Vexlor selected the most elaborate crystal vessel at his setting, a piece specifically designed to appeal to Zordian aesthetic preferences, with complex geometric patterns that mimic their homeworld's sacred formations. Primary sequencer Vexlor has selected the vessel we call Truth's Prism, Chen announced, allowing a note of solemn ceremony to enter his voice. In Earth's ancient Persian diplomatic tradition, this represents a commitment to absolute transparency in negotiations. How appropriate for the Zordian delegation, which has emphasized clarity and precision in our discussions. Vexor's crystal structure briefly dimmed before brightening again, a sign of momentary discomfort followed by compensatory confidence. The Zordian alliance values transparency above all in galactic affairs, he stated smoothly. Indeed, Chen agreed, his finger discreetly pressing the control device in his pocket. Which is why Earth wishes to honor this value with a demonstration of true transparency. Instantly, holographic projections appeared above each table, not from the room's standard communication system, but from the quantum receivers embedded in the ceremonial vessels themselves. The projections displayed translation comparisons, identical Zordian statements that had been rendered differently to different species throughout the negotiations. What is the meaning of this? Vexlor demanded, his crystal structure flashing with patterns Chen recognized as alarm. A demonstration of Earth's commitment to honest diplomacy, Chen replied calmly. Over the past 3 days, our delegation has documented systematic variations in how the central translation system renders Zordian statements to different delegations. What appears as support for territorial claims to one species becomes advocacy for open review to another. The reception hall erupted in a cacophony of responses, clicking mandibles from the chitin representatives, color fluctuations across the Mare delegate's skin, energetic pulses from the Axiom proxies. Chen allowed the initial shock to reverberate through the room before raising his hand for attention. Earth does not present this evidence to accuse, but to clarify, he stated firmly. As the newest member of this gathering, we have no established position to defend, no historical grievances to nurture. Our only interest is in establishing diplomatic relationships based on accurate understanding. Vexlor rose, his crystalline form now pulsing with intense patterns. These selective examples misrepresent the complexity of interspecies translation. Nuance necessarily varies according to linguistic and cultural contexts. A valid observation, Chen acknowledged, which is why Earth has collaborated with the Axiom Confederacy to develop an alternative translation protocol that preserves original meaning while providing culturally appropriate context notations. At this revelation, Sentinel Oros stood. The Confederacy confirms this collaboration. Our quantum communication specialists have verified the accuracy of Commander Chen's evidence and assisted in creating a transparency protocol that can be implemented immediately. Submatriarch Tisket of the Chiton Hive rose next, her mandibles producing the formal clicking pattern that indicated official pronouncement. Hive intelligence has independently verified translation discrepancies. Pattern suggests deliberate manipulation, not technical limitation. As Chen had anticipated, the evidence presented by multiple species carried weight that Earth alone could not have achieved. The Zordian delegation's crystal structures now pulsed with rapid, discordant patterns as they communicated among themselves in their native form. "You arranged this theatrical display to undermine Zordian credibility," tactical sequencer Rectal accused, addressing Chen directly. "And primitive species attempting to destabilize established galactic protocols." Chen shook his head. "Not to undermine, but to improve. Earth has no desire to displace the Zordian alliance from its position of technological leadership. We seek only to ensure that all species participate in these negotiations with accurate information." He pressed another control on the device in his pocket, activating the second phase of his plan. Above the central table, a new holographic display appeared, this one showing the complete record of the Zordian delegation's private communication with the Earth vessel. Every promise of support, every assurance of alliance, contrasted directly with the intercepted partial communication, revealing their true intention to isolate Earth from meaningful participation. The Zordian alliance selected Earth's delegation because they believed a historian would be easily manipulated, Chen explained to the gathered representatives. "They correctly assessed that I lack technical expertise in modern galactic systems. However, they failed to consider that a historian's perspective might offer different kinds of insights." He moved to the center of the room, standing directly before the Zordian delegation. Throughout human history, diplomatic deception has followed predictable patterns. The Persian Empire maintained control over diverse territories by telling each province what they wanted to hear. The Byzantine Empire extended its influence by positioning itself as the essential intermediary between competing powers. These strategies succeeded for centuries until the deceived parties communicated directly with each other. Vexlor's crystal structure had stopped its agitated pulsing, settling into a rigid formation that Chen interpreted as defensive calculation. What does Earth seek from this revelation? The removal of the Zordian alliance from the Council? Control of the translation infrastructure? Neither, Chen replied, his voice calm but carrying throughout the now silent hall. Earth proposes a cooperative solution. The current translation system remains in place, but with the addition of the transparency protocol developed with the Axiom Confederacy, all delegations receive identical translations with cultural context notations clearly identified as interpretive elements. Ambassador Niara of the Mare Collective rose, her skin pulsing with deep blue tones. The collective supports this proposal. Accurate communication forms the foundation of sustainable interspecies relations. One by one, representatives from other delegations indicated their support until a clear majority had aligned with the Transparency Initiative. The Zordian delegation remained silent, their crystal structures now dim and still. Qin returned to the small platform. In the spirit of Earth's diplomatic traditions, I propose we continue this gathering as intended, a cultural exchange where we learn from one another. The formal adoption of the Transparency Protocol can be addressed in tomorrow's General Council session. As the tension in the room gradually dissipated, delegations began to mingle, examining the evidence displays and discussing the implications among themselves. Chen found himself approached by Harmony sequencer Mylara, who had separated from the other Zordians. "A masterful application of historical precedent, Commander Chen," she said, her crystal structure showing a pattern Chen hadn't observed before. "You have transformed Earth's perceived weakness into a strategic advantage." "History often repeats itself because fundamental dynamics remain constant," Chen replied. "The forms change, but the underlying patterns persist." "The Zordian alliance has grown complacent in its technological superiority," Milwara acknowledged. "Your approach reminds us that diversity of perspective provides resilience the galaxy requires." "Will the Zordian delegation support the Transparency Protocol?" Chen asked directly. Milara's crystal structure shifted into a complex pattern. "There will be resistance from tactical sequencer Rectal and others who perceive it as diminishing our influence. However, those of us responsible for long-term harmony recognize that adaptation ensures survival. I will advocate for acceptance." As the evening proceeded, Chun circulated through the gathering, engaging with representatives from various species. Many expressed appreciation for Earth's initiative, while others remained cautiously neutral, unwilling to openly oppose the Zordians, despite supporting the transparency measure. Lieutenant Rivera approached with an urgent communication from Earth Command. "Admiral Katri wishes to speak with you immediately, sir. She's received preliminary reports of tonight's events." Chen excused himself and moved to a private communication alcove, where the Admiral's stern face appeared on the secure channel. "Commander, our monitoring station just reported a significant shift in diplomatic alignments at Harmonia," she began without preamble. "What exactly have you done?" "Applied historical precedent to a contemporary situation, Admiral," Chen replied. "The Zordians were manipulating translations to isolate Earth while extracting our technological innovations. I've exposed the practice and proposed a solution that preserves their position while ensuring fair participation for all species." The Admiral's expression remained severe, but Chen detected a hint of reluctant approval. "The Defense Council is concerned about potential retaliation. The Zordians control technology that Earth desperately needs. They also need what we offer, innovative approaches to problems their linear thinking hasn't solved," Chen countered. "By positioning this as an improvement rather than an accusation, I've provided them with a face-saving way to adapt. Their position isn't threatened, only their methods." After a thoughtful silence, Admiral Katri nodded. "Proceed with implementation of this transparency protocol, but monitor the Zordian response carefully. If they withdraw support for Earth's resource petitions entirely—" "They won't," Chen interrupted with confidence. "That would only confirm their duplicity to the entire galactic community. They'll adapt their strategy instead, and in doing so, they'll demonstrate exactly why diversity of thought is essential to the Council's future." As he returned to the gathering, Chen observed the Zordian delegation engaged in what appeared to be intense discussion with representatives from several other species. Their crystal structures displayed patterns of heightened activity, but not the defensive rigidity from earlier. They were negotiating, adapting, precisely as he had predicted. Tomorrow's council session would formalize the new protocol, but the true victory had already been achieved. Earth had transformed its position from isolated newcomer to principled advocate for transparency. The path to fair resource access now lay open, not through technological superiority, but through the diplomatic wisdom accumulated throughout human history. Chen smiled to himself as he watched the interactions unfolding across the reception hall. The Zordians had selected a historian as Earth's representative, believing it would facilitate their manipulation. Instead, they had encountered a strategy born from studying thousands of years of human diplomatic maneuvering, a perspective as alien to them as their crystalline physiology was to him. He touched the ancient timepiece in his pocket, a genuine artifact from Earth's 19th century that had belonged to his great-grandfather. Some technologies became obsolete, but the principles of human interaction discovered through centuries of diplomacy remained eternally relevant, even among the stars. The formal council session convened the following morning in Harmonia's Grand Assembly Chamber. Unlike previous meetings, the atmosphere carried a palpable tension, mixed with an unexpected current of anticipation. Commander Chen arrived early to find the chamber already half-filled, unusual for proceedings that typically began with delegates straggling in according to their species' cultural perceptions of punctuality. Today, no one wanted to miss the opening statements. Chen took his place at Earth's assigned station in the outer ring, now acutely aware of how the physical arrangement reflected the power hierarchy he had challenged. Lieutenant Rivera sat beside him, data tablet prepared with the formal proposal for the transparency protocol they would submit for council consideration. "The Zordian delegation has been in continuous session since last night's banquet," Rivera reported quietly. "Our monitoring systems detected multiple secure communications to their homeworld throughout the night cycle." Chen nodded, unsurprised. "They're recalibrating their approach. The question is whether they'll oppose the protocol directly or attempt to modify it to preserve some advantage." The answer came moments later as the Zordian delegation entered the chamber. Rather than their usual formation with Vexlor at the center, Harmony sequencer Milara led their procession. Her crystal structure displayed a formal pattern that Chen recognized from his studies of Zordian diplomatic history. The configuration used when presenting a significant policy shift, a strategic realignment, Chen murmured. They're positioning Milara as the new voice of their delegation, emphasizing harmony over tactical advantage. As the session was called to order, Chen noted other subtle shifts in the chamber's dynamics. Delegations that had previously oriented themselves toward the Zordian position now maintained careful neutrality in their alignment. The Katon representatives had moved their station slightly closer to Earth's position, a physical manifestation of their emerging alliance that would be obvious to any species that prioritized spatial relationships in their communication. The Council Arbiter, a member of the ancient Chronos species whose profound temporal perception made him ideally suited for moderating galactic diplomacy, brought the session to order with a series of harmonic tones. The Council acknowledges an extraordinary motion from the Earth delegation regarding communication protocols, the Arbiter announced, his voice seeming to come from both the present and slightly adjacent time frame simultaneously, a disconcerting effect of Chronos' speech patterns. Commander Chen will present the proposal. Chen rose and moved to the central podium, conscious of 23 different species watching with varying biological expressions of attention. The transparency protocol had been formatted according to Council submission standards, but Chen had insisted on delivering it with a spoken address rather than the more common direct data transfer. "Distinguished representatives," he began, "Earth comes before this Council as its newest member, humbled by the ancient civilizations and advanced species gathered here. Our proposal arises not from a position of technological superiority, but from our species' long experience with the fundamental challenge all sentient beings share, the struggle to truly understand one another." He activated the display behind him, showing a simplified representation of the translation discrepancies, without directly highlighting the Zordian role in creating them. "The current translation system has served the galactic community admirably in facilitating basic communication," Chen continued. "Earth proposes not its replacement, but its enhancement, through a supplemental protocol that ensures all participants receive identical translations of substantive statements with cultural context notations clearly distinguished from factual content." Murmurs of approval rippled through various delegations. Chen noticed the Mer Collective representative's skin glowing with harmonious blue patterns of agreement, while the Chiton delegates' antennae vibrated in their species' expression of affirming resonance. "The proposed transparency protocol requires no significant architectural changes to existing systems," Chen explained, addressing the technical concerns directly. Developed in collaboration with the Axiom Confederacy's quantum communication specialists, it operates as an overlay that verifies translation consistency while preserving the cultural nuances that enrich our understanding of one another. He paused, then added what he knew would be the most controversial element. "Additionally, Earth proposes that all formal resource negotiations be conducted under a verification mode, where any delegate may request to see the original untranslated communication alongside its standard translation." A stir went through the assembly at this suggestion. The Zordian delegation's crystal structures pulsed with rapid patterns that Chen interpreted as internal debate. Then, Mylara rose, indicating her desire to address the Council. "The Arbiter recognizes Harmony sequencer Mylara of the Zordian Alliance," the Chronos moderator announced. Mylara moved to the central podium as Chen returned to Earth's station. Her crystalline form caught the chamber's light, refracting it in a display more subdued than the usual Zordian presentations. "The Zordian Alliance has reviewed Earth's proposal with great interest," she began, her translated voice carrying a resonant quality that suggested careful calibration. "For 3 millennia, our civilization has provided the technological infrastructure that enables galactic cooperation. We recognize this responsibility as both a privilege and a burden." She paused, her crystal structure shifting into a more open configuration. "The historical perspective offered by Commander Chen reveals patterns our technological approach had not identified. Where we saw efficient cultural customization, others experienced inconsistency. The Zordian Alliance therefore supports the implementation of the Transparency Protocol as a valuable evolution of galactic communication." A wave of surprise moved through the chamber. Chen maintained a diplomatic, neutral expression, but inwardly he felt a surge of satisfaction. The Zordians had chosen adaptation over opposition, precisely as he had hoped. "However," Mylara continued, "we propose one modification. Rather than implementing the protocol as an Axiom Confederacy technology operating parallel to Zordian systems, we offer to integrate the transparency requirements directly into the primary translation matrix, with open verification access available to all Council species." A clever counter, Chen thought. The Zordians would maintain control of the infrastructure while appearing magnanimous in their acceptance of transparency requirements. It demonstrated exactly the kind of diplomatic agility he had expected from a civilization that had maintained its dominance for thousands of years. The arbiter turned toward Earth's station. "Does the Earth delegation accept this modification to their proposal?" Chen stood once more. "Earth welcomes the Zordian Alliance's constructive engagement with our proposal. We accept their modification with one condition: that an independent verification committee with rotating membership from all council species conduct quarterly audits of the integrated system to certify its compliance with transparency standards." Mylara's crystal structure briefly dimmed, before brightening in what Chin now recognized as her expression of respectful acknowledgement. "The Zordian Alliance accepts this condition, provided the committee's structure ensures technological expertise appropriate to the evaluation task." "A reasonable parameter," Chen agreed, recognizing the subtle negotiation within the negotiation. The Zordians were ensuring that only species with sufficient technological sophistication could meaningfully participate in the audit process, maintaining some advantage while appearing to concede entirely. The arbiter called for a formal vote, and the transparency protocol with its negotiated modifications was adopted by unanimous consent, a rare outcome in council proceedings. As the session transitioned to other matters, Chen found himself approached by representatives from multiple species expressing appreciation for Earth's initiative. The Khitan submatriarch Sket clicked her mandibles in a pattern of formal alliance recognition. Earth wisdom, complementary to hive efficiency, future collaboration, beneficial. Ambassador Nyara of the Mir Collective rippled her skin in approval. "Your species navigates turbulent currents with unexpected skill, Commander. The Collective foresees productive exchanges in our future." Even representatives from species that had previously ignored Earth's delegation now acknowledged Chen as he moved through the chamber. The dynamic had shifted, not with Earth supplanting the Zordians in influence, but with a new appreciation for the diverse approaches different species brought to the galactic community. As the formal session concluded, Chen found Vexlor waiting near the chamber exit. The primary sequencer's crystal structure displayed a pattern Chen hadn't seen before, more complex and somehow more authentic than his previous diplomatic configurations. "Commander Chen," Vexlor greeted him, "the Zordian Alliance extends an invitation to continue our discussions in a more direct format. Perhaps you would join me for an exchange without translation interfaces? I have taken the liberty of learning basic human communication patterns." The gesture was significant, a Zordian offering to communicate without the technology that had been their primary advantage. "I would be honored," Chen replied, "though my understanding of crystalline communication patterns remains rudimentary." "As it should be," Vexlor responded. "We each begin from our own foundations and build understanding progressively. The Zordian Alliance selected you as Earth's representative because we believed a historian would focus on past patterns rather than future possibilities. I acknowledge this assessment was incorrect." Chen smiled slightly. "Not entirely incorrect, primary sequencer. I do focus on patterns, but history teaches that patterns evolve when new elements are introduced. Earth represents such an element in the galactic community." Vexlor's crystal structure shifted in what Chen now recognized as thoughtful consideration. The Zordian Alliance has dominated council proceedings for millennium through technological superiority. Your approach suggests alternative forms of influence we had not fully quantified. "Different species bring different strengths," Chen replied. "Earth's historical experience with diversity, both the conflicts it generated and the innovations it sparked, provides perspective that complements Zordian technological precision. A perspective we undervalued," Vexlor acknowledged. "The transparency protocol will necessitate adjustments to our diplomatic approach, but the Zordian Alliance recognizes adaptation as essential to longevity. We look forward to exploring how our civilizations might collaborate more authentically moving forward." As Vexlor departed, Lieutenant Rivera approached with a communication from Earth Command. "Admiral Katri sends her congratulations, sir. The Defense Council is impressed with the outcome. They're particularly interested in the resource access implications." Chen nodded, watching the various delegations departing the chamber. "The formal resource negotiations begin tomorrow, with Earth now participating in all relevant committees. Our position has fundamentally changed, not because we demanded access, but because we demonstrated value to the community as a whole. The Zordians still control most of the critical technologies we need, Rivera pointed out. But they now recognize that we offer something they need in return, Chun replied. Not military power or resource wealth, but a complementary perspective that strengthens the entire system. That recognition creates the foundation for genuine exchange rather than exploitation. 3 days later, as the resource negotiations neared completion, Chen stood at the viewport in Earth's diplomatic vessel, gazing out at the stars that would soon become highways for increased human participation in galactic affairs. The agreements secured far exceed Earth Command's expectations: access to key resource systems, technology transfer protocols that respected both Zordian proprietary interests and Earth's development needs, and formal recognition of human terraforming techniques as valuable contributions to the galactic knowledge base. Admiral Khatri's image appeared on the communication screen behind him. Commander, the Council has formally ratified the resource agreements. Earth has achieved in 1 week what our strategic projections suggested would take years of gradual integration. We benefited from fortunate circumstances, Admiral, Chin replied modestly. Fortune favors the prepared mind, Khatri countered. Your application of historical diplomatic principles created those circumstances. The Defense Council is recommending a permanent diplomatic appointment for you, Earth's first ambassador to the Galactic Council. Jen turned from the viewport, surprised by the offer. My expertise is in historical analysis, Admiral, not ongoing diplomatic service. Your expertise is precisely what Earth needs in this new chapter of our history, Khatri insisted. The Zordians selected a historian because they believed it would give them an advantage. Instead, your perspective revealed possibilities that conventional diplomatic training would have missed. After the communication ended, Chen returned to the viewport considering the offer. The stars beyond Harmonia Station no longer seemed distant and unreachable. Earth had secured its place in the galactic community not through military might or technological dominance, but through the accumulated wisdom of human diplomatic history, proving that understanding the past truly was the key to navigating the future. A chime announced a visitor. Harmony sequencer Mylara had arrived for their scheduled discussion of cultural exchange initiatives. As Chen welcomed her aboard the Earth vessel, he realized that his academic understanding of historical diplomatic patterns had forever shifted from theoretical to practical. The ancient strategies he had studied throughout his career had proven their enduring value across species and millennia. 6 months later, Ambassador Chen stood in the newly constructed Earth Embassy on Harmonia Station. The circular chamber incorporated architectural elements from human civilizations spanning 5,000 years. Greek columns supporting a ceiling inspired by the Hagia Sophia, walls featuring motifs from the Forbidden City alongside Maya astronomical calculations, and a central floor mosaic combining Persian and West African patterns. Representatives from 23 species gathered for the embassy's formal opening. The Zordian delegation, now permanently headed by Mylara following Vexlor's reassignment to technological research, presented Earth with a ceremonial gift. A crystalline structure that captured and displayed the full spectrum of Earth's atmospheric light. The Zordian Alliance offers this token of respect for Earth's contribution to galactic harmony, Mylara announced, her crystal structure displaying what Chen now recognized as their formal pattern of alliance recognition. Where once we saw only a species seeking resources, we now recognize a civilization offering wisdom that transcends technological advancement. Chen accepted the gift with appropriate ceremony, then addressed the gathered delegates. Earth thanks the Zordian Alliance and all Council species for their welcome. Throughout human history, our greatest achievements have come not from isolation but from exchange of goods, ideas, and perspectives. As we take our place in the galactic community, we bring not demands, but offerings. The accumulated wisdom of a species that has learned, often through difficult lessons, that diversity strengthens rather than weakens civilization. Later, alone in his office, Chen opened an antique book, Sun Tzu's The Art of War, the same copy he had consulted throughout the negotiations. Inside the cover, he had written a new notation. The supreme art of diplomacy is to achieve your aims without creating enemies. Earth had secured its future among the stars not by defeating the Zordians, but by transforming their relationship from manipulation to genuine alliance. The Transparency Protocol had evolved into a cornerstone of Council proceedings, with Chin now leading the quarterly audit committee that ensured its proper implementation. The communications screen on his desk activated, showing an incoming transmission from the newly established human colony on Proxima Centauri b. Resource shipments from chitin mining operations had arrived ahead of schedule, along with biological compounds from the Mer Collective that would accelerate the planet's terraforming process. Even the Zordians had contributed advanced atmospheric processors that significantly reduced the projected timeline for human habitation. As Chen authorized the supply distribution, he reflected on how quickly humanity's position had evolved, from isolated newcomers to respected contributors in the span of a single year. A transformation catalyzed not by superior technology or military might, but by the application of diplomatic wisdom accumulated throughout human history. Outside his window, ships from across the galaxy docked at Harmonia Station, the physical manifestation of cooperation among profoundly different species. Earth's voice now carried weight in council deliberations, not because of power, but because of perspective. The Zordians remained the technological leaders, the Khitan controlled crucial mining resources, and the Mer Collective provided irreplaceable biological compounds, but Earth had found its own essential contribution to galactic civilization. Chen closed the ancient book and placed it carefully on the shelf behind his desk, alongside new volumes documenting interspecies diplomatic protocols. History had provided the foundation, but the future would require new wisdom, born from unprecedented encounters and collaborations. The galaxy had gained not merely another spacefaring species, but a civilization whose unique journey from isolation to cooperation offered insights that even the oldest council members found valuable. As Ambassador Chen prepared for the next council session, he carried with him the knowledge that human history, with all its triumphs and failures, wisdom and folly, had proven its worth among the stars.